Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to One American's Perspective. Gonna break sequence a little bit with the Bill of Rights series that I'm going to be doing because I woke up early this morning, struck by a thought, something that I wanted to write some notes down and then share with you. So you'll forgive me if I still have that morning sound in my voice, but I wanted to get this out there before the day really got going. And you'll forgive me as I'm reading through what I wrote down today to kind of keep me on track. It's not that I'm purposely avoiding looking at the camera, but I want to make sure that I have some clarity in the message because what I'm about to say might be slightly convoluted. So I'll attempt to keep the path straight and narrow to the best extent possible. Faith is the most foundational aspect of our existence. We know this to a lesser extent because when somebody tells us something, even if it's slightly out of the ordinary, they saw a mutual friend that you haven't seen in years, or they saw a great price at the grocery store, even though prices have been going up, they'll say something to the effect of, would you believe? Would you believe what I saw or what I experienced, who I saw? The plausibility of what they claim actually being true is oftentimes less associated with the event itself and its own plausibility, and more based on the credibility of the person who is telling us this. So we say we put our trust in somebody to tell us something. And for small things, we can have a greater swath of trust for individuals and for many individuals. And for larger things, we might put, or things that require a greater deal of trust, we might reserve that for a select few whom we place a great deal of trust. Family members, a spouse, a best friend, something of that nature. I would say you can back that up by the credibility of the person telling you being the primary factor that you take into account when choosing to believe something or not. Because if a child tells you something, even slightly off, you say they saw something today that is pretty normal. They saw the mailman delivering the mail. You might hesitate to believe them until it's corroborated by another person or an adult that you trust even further. Which anybody that has kids, you understand one of them is just prone to fibbing. So you might have they might have a lower degree of credibility in your eyes. So you might place a lesser degree of trust in them. Unfortunately, it's often that way with adults as well. We won't. I won't belabor that point. To a greater extent, we say that we believe what we see. I'll see it when I believe it, or I'll believe it when I see it, rather. In general, this means that we trust our own senses to explore and to communicate to us what the external world around us is doing. One of the shows that I've always liked, they do brain games. It's a show, I think it was on Nat Geo or something like that. Oftentimes in that show, you see how easily it is, or how easily the brain, therefore, like your all of your senses feeding back to the central control system, which is your brain and your nervous system, how easily it's hacked or tricked, or how often it's wrong, based on the external circumstances around us, and how we can oftentimes see that we don't actually see what we think we're seeing, or we miss something that does occur. There's always the good psychology video, the experiment they did of people, an audience watching people pass a basketball back and forth and being told they have to count the number of times the basketball passes back and forth. And in the background, it's not told to the subjects of the experiment prior to, but there's a person in a gorilla suit walking back and forth. And oftentimes what you'll find is at the end of this video, when it plays, people have the count of the basketball passes pretty easily. It's not a very difficult task for an adult to keep track of. But then the experimenter will ask, well, did you see the gorilla? And most people will reply, what gorilla? What are you talking about? So they miss what was right in front of them. So it's easy to see to anybody who is even slightly aware how often we can be wrong, that our senses can fool us or can fail to pick something up that's right in front of us. So in a sense, in the most base sense, where we believe in our own senses, even though we know that those senses are not 100%. They can't 100% be trusted. So this presents us with the problem. We know we're fallible, but we have to act anyway, at least in part based on this, what we see, hear, touch, smell. We have to move forward. And they're not always wrong, but they're good enough to operate. So we have faith that we're being wrong, or we're being right. We perceive things correctly more often than we perceive them incorrectly. So does our error, or our proneness to being wrong, stop us from operating in the world around us, knowing that we could do something wrong or see something wrong? For some, that answer might be yes. And they're oftentimes crippled by the anxiety of all the potential bad outcomes that could come from their own incompetence, their own inability to perceive and accurately judge the world around them. For others, for those of us that continue to proceed in the world despite this, there's one of two possibilities. Either one, we're blind to it, which some people may be temporarily blinded, but if you really sit and think about it, you'll recognize that we have to have faith in what it is we see and hear and think in order to move. We cannot move without the faith first in whatever walk. Or two, we embrace the uncertainty and we move forward courageously, rather than out of ignorance, but out of courage, that things will be okay. So we're placing our faith in something. And that begs the question, if we know that we're wrong, but we're going to move forward as if our wrongness doesn't exist, or even more accurately, that us being wrong will not end our lives, meaning that we have a natural inclination towards our own self-preservation. If we act with faith that even the things that we mess up won't necessarily lead to our own demise, although anybody with their eyes fully open can see that they could easily do that. If you're not paying attention walking down the street, it wouldn't be a shock to most people if you get hit by a car, because that's the nature of crossing the street. So then, to what should we put our faith? That everything will be okay if we know we will likely mess up. And that is a question and a topic for a different video. However, I'll leave you with this idea. In the book of Genesis, in the garden, when God first makes Adam and he first makes Eve, he gives them their commandments, and he asks that they trust in him to provide and to abide by his commandments, his rules within the natural order of things. The devil comes along and says that you're missing something. The fruit of the tree of good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil. You don't see all there is to see. By eating this fruit, I will show you what you are missing. You will see. So then, the devil demands that seeing is believing. But God says, believing, we must believe in order to see. So I'll leave you with that. I hope you have a blessed day. I'll talk to you guys later. Out here.